Yes, sir. What is up, everybody? Through some minor delays, we are actually in the fold, ready to go. Lindy end zone in the building for the touchdown, taking the lead for the Eagles one video at a time and dropping a bucket for my Dallas Mavericks. You already know the deal. But today, I'm very excited for this one. I finally get to jump back on the segment of my channel where I wanted to go over a recon for the Eagles schedule this year for the 2021 season. And the special guest with me going over to represent the Washington football team, to which we play way later in the year, week 15 and week 17. Quite a time to go, almost back to back, and in our division rivalry there. But joining me is the host, Big Doug of the Big Douglas Show. So I'm glad to have you on here, man, and I appreciate you accepting the invitation to come on to represent your favorite football team in the NFL, and this should be a fun one, man.
I'm excited that you got me on here. Let's do it.
All right, man. Well, where should we begin? So I mean, obviously, both teams have been going through a lot this off season, in different respects. For the Eagles, it's been so rough, man. I can, between the last game of the 2020 season, us proverbially tanking, against you guys for what it's worth. The Giants fans were not very happy about that, but that's not the here nor there. Going into 2021, the Eagles have had a ton of change. Our once franchise quarterback is not here anymore. Jalen Hurts is a question mark. We get Devontae Smith, and in all regards to our current draft class. But we're going to make this a little bit about the football team. Again, this is an Eagles recon, so we're going to find out a little bit as to what's been going on with the Washington football team. And, for a content creator as yourself, your opinions on everything, on how the football team under Coach Ron Rivera is shaping out so far, with training camp officially starting today. The Eagles players are scheduled to have their first practice tomorrow. I'm not exactly sure when the players for the football team have their first official practice, but there's a lot of optimism for both football teams, definitely.
Football is back, and we're excited about it. Well, listen, I'll tell you this. Devontae Smith, as far as I'm concerned, was wide receiver 1 this year. I am also a UGA fan, so I am all too familiar with Devontae Smith, who crushed our hopes at a natty. So I loved that pick for you guys. Getting 2 first-round picks for the quarterback, I mean, seems like a steal, considering it was obvious the franchise didn't want him anymore. So, listen, my co-host tells me all the time we're in year 2 of a rebuild. Ron keeps telling us, but because of the good year we had last year, I think a lot of fans don't see it that way. I think at least as Eagle fans, you get to see this as a complete rebuild, right?
I'm more along the lines of like a rebuild / retooling. A lot of the players on our roster from last year have been carried over, especially from the draft class, and we've only been trying to improve on what we tried to do in 2020, because honestly, I don't think a single Eagles fan predicted that kind of implosion to happen whatsoever. And then outside of that, and to see what the Washington football team went through last year, you guys had seemed to have a quarterback carousel of yourself. Alex Smith started about 6 games, and then you had
4 quarterbacks last year.
Yeah, that's crazy. For you guys to go through Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins, Taylor Heineke for a little bit. He shows the grit that he did against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For you guys to go through that yourselves and to still finish 7-9, I think there's a lot of optimism going forward for you guys, especially for a first year head coach to the Washington football team and Ron Rivera, and of course bringing in Jack Del Rio to help him out.
Yeah, the two head coaches, as I like to call them, have really solidified what they're doing here. But Ron is interesting. He has been on the record several times saying that he really did a study of what went wrong in Carolina and has totally fixed those things and is trying to learn from those things. It's interesting because one of those things was having a quarterback competition, and he has told us numerous times that they had planned on doing that last year with Dwayne, and they just didn't do it, and they'll do it this year. But as it's easy to see, it's Fitzpatrick's job to lose. And frankly, I think they're excited to have him. What they did not have last year was a guy willing to pump the ball down the field. That is exactly what Fitzpatrick is willing to do.
Yeah, and you could only imagine with Fitzpatrick's experience, and whether, for what it's worth, I mean, he can either be Fitz magic or Fitz tragic. I mean, you guys,
Okay.
you guys in those terms, for the amount of time that he's going to be on the football team, with the amount of weapons that he has at his disposal, potentially, whether it's current guys on the roster, free agency pickups, and then what you guys did through the draft, it seems to me that you guys want to try and find that middle ground of a Ryan Fitzpatrick as a quarterback to allow him to be more consistent down the stretch over the course of a season.
No doubt. And that's what Ron said. He said that they did the opposite in Carolina. They went number one for the quarterback and then just kind of relied on his talents. And that is exactly what they do not plan on doing now. And you can see it because, I mean, what the Bears gave up for Justin Fields, I mean, that was nothing compared to what the market is right now. It would have not cost that much more for Washington to have done that. And they didn't. They stayed pat. I mean, they were really excited about Jamin Davis. The second round pick Cosme. They really thought that he was not going to get out of the first round. And to your point, the third round pick, Diami Brown, they didn't feel was going to get out of the second round. So this is the way that he has decided to pivot from Charlotte, which is we plan on building the roster and kind of doing a Tampa Bay thing, right? Where they have built the roster out and inserted quarter QB1.
And it's funny because Ryan Fitzpatrick has played for Tampa Bay before, so there's that familiarity there.
He was never going to get the final say so over their number one overall draft pick, though.
Yeah, no.
Right.
So,
yeah. Jameis was there. He was always going to get the last snap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, speaking of the rookie class for the Washington football team, we bring up Jamin Davis, your first round pick. You took him 19th in the draft out of Kentucky. I think he was considered a linebacker for some Eagles fans to be towards the top of the list, but we knew in the back of our minds based on history that the Eagles and especially with Howie Roseman being at the helm and wanting to make all of the decisions and keep his hand in the pot or bowl, so to speak, that we weren't going to take a linebacker that early. And you guys seen that it was a position of need, and you pretty much pounced on it. I can't imagine that there was any complaints on that pick when you guys were up at 19.
No, and the national guys kind of felt the same way. And that's another one that I think that Del Rio and Ron were really, really, really high on. They had, I think they won't tell you, I'm sure they had Michael Parsons 1 and Jamin Davis 2. Mm-hmm. And Parsons, even though the conversations had started, he was never falling that far. But Davis gives Washington something they haven't had in a long time, and that's a middle linebacker that can go to side, kind of like a Roquan Smith. Kind of athlete. Last year, it was John Bostic at middle linebacker. And while I appreciate John Bostic and his football acumen, he is not the example of who you want running sideline to sideline with the Zach Ertz and Dallas Goederts of the world.
Yeah, no, no, of course not. And yeah, I mean, and I think it was almost, I think it was almost written in the sand for quite a while in terms of Micah Parsons and where he actually wanted to go. Ever since Penn State, he still wanted to stay in the blue and white, and a lot of people felt that it was referring to the Dallas Cowboys, and it ended up being a dream come true for
Well,
him. But
that pick was like their CD Lamb pick last year, right? It was definitely not necessary, but when talent like that falls to you, I guarantee you, Cowboys did not think Micah Parsons was going to be sitting there when they picked. So while they had linebackers and it wasn't a need, boy, when a guy like that falls to you, just like CD Lamb last year, they didn't need a receiver, but he was too good to pass up in the moment. So give him credit for at least taking what's available, right?
yeah, my bad, my bad about that. I'm trying to seems I gotta make somebody a moderator in the chat because there seems to be a spammer. So try and
Yeah.
get him out try and get him out of here. So uh, that's taken care of it. It's always irritating having those. That's actually the first time that it's happened to me, and go figure. It's in the middle of a stream with a new person on my channel. Right? That's pretty funny.
Tech,
But
technology.
yeah, yeah, of course. So yeah, I just had to bring up my stream on a YouTube window, make somebody give somebody a wrench to get that taken care of. So um, obviously with that taken care of now, we can move further down. I see in the second round, the 51st pick, you guys took a offensive tackle out of Texas. I think his name is Samuel Cosme, if the pronunciation is correct. And I think that's one of the I think that's one of the more I think that was one of the more higher priority positions of need. Just seeing what the offensive line was and wasn't able to do at times for Washington, depending on who the quarterback was under center, and then you guys were rumored to be in that Orlando Brown sweepstakes and trying to bring him to Washington. Then he ends up going to Kansas City. To take a lineman, that early in the draft in the second round, it seems that you guys are trying to fill some holes there on the offensive line.
They were obviously high on Cosme because it took 2 days in camp for the rookies before they were released. Now his name befuddles me, but Morgan Moses was there, and the one thing Washington fans got frustrated about Morgan Moses because he was a penalty machine 2 years ago, but last year he was really good. And the other thing is he posted every game. I mean, I don't know if he missed a game the last 4 years. So the notion that they cut him 2 days after they drafted Cosme and he showed up to rookie minicamp tells me they're really excited about him. Now we've talked about this over on the show. I think probably Cornelius Lucas starts at right tackle, but I don't think he stays there long. I think they're really high on Cosme.
Cool. It's good. It's good to know. And the Eagles coming off of the 2020 season, I mean, 14 different lineups in 16 games. There's no way in any realm, any universe that is ideal for a football team. So we decided in the draft this year, and we also took lineman in the second round. Although his injury history is pretty concerning because he's tore a ligament in his knee, in both of his knees. But when you talk about guys at the kids at the top of their game coming into the NFL, Landon Dickerson was one of those guys coming out of Alabama, and I was pretty excited about it. I'm not going to lie, but as with anybody with that kind of baggage, there's going to be a cause for pause as to how healthy he's going to be, especially with him starting his NFL career.
Agreed. But I will say I was a big fan of his coming out of Alabama. So, I mean, they're trying to, at least the organization is trying to make, moves to strengthen up the lines, and which is necessary when you have that quarterback there. I wonder if, and I don't know this for sure, but I wonder if the two of them played together at some point because I think Dickerson's a senior
Yeah, I think Jalen Hurts left for Oklahoma as soon as Landon
when they switched.
started to come up for Alabama. So the two of them just missed each other. I think it was the year. I think it was the following year when Jalen went to Oklahoma, just because of that competition there between him and Tua, and Jalen wanted his own team to show what he's worth as a quarterback. Before a possible draft.
What do you think about Jalen Hurts? You like him?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I honestly took 2020 with a grain of salt, man. I mean, you know, for him to get drafted into that situation in the first place, the Eagles were, Eagles and fans alike were in a situation where we thought we had a franchise quarterback going into the 2020 season. We're hoping through the draft that we actually get him some help, especially on the outside, some receivers that can really, receivers that can grow with him and not necessarily have to rely on free agency all the time.
Jalen Rager's gonna have to be good, right?
What's that?
Said Jalen Rager's got to be good this year, like really good.
Yeah. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. But I think with the addition of Devontae Smith, with him just being it's outside of him being a rookie. Receivers don't win the Heisman, every single year. I mean, it's been almost, it's been a little over 3 decades for a receiver to do that. And just because he's a rookie doesn't mean that he's not going to add a little bit of an intimidation factor in terms of competition. Like, you have to imagine that Jalen Rager's thinking, well, they took me in the first round last year, but they went out this year again and took another receiver, and it so happens to be Devontae Smith, which I'm pretty sure Jalen Rager is familiar with. In terms of the collegiate level, they've had to know each other at some point in time. But that's one thing that that we have to imagine, that Devontae Smith is going to push these guys, and with the combination of him and the atmosphere of first-year head coach Nick Sirianni, preaching competition hour after hour, day in and day out, that this should be the proper formula for the year 2 players to improve on a season that didn't really benefit anybody in terms of what happened to the Eagles last year.
I agree. Although I will say I don't think that the receivers mind as much as you'd think, because frankly, when they get somebody lined up on the other side of the field, that takes a little bit of distraction, makes their life so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And sometimes I mean, you would want a perfect world where you have a balance to which either the quarterback makes the receiver or the receiver makes the quarterback, and it was just there was too much of an opposite spectrum in both of those measures, where Carson in 2019 takes a bunch of nobodies and wins the last 4 games to make it into the playoffs and win the division, and then the following year he completely implodes, and it didn't matter what talent he had on the outside. Like they couldn't benefit from his poor play, and then with them having the growing pains of being a rookie in the NFL and an offense that necessarily didn't suit them in the first place, it was just a double negative in both aspects. And with fresh faces in the organization now, especially on that coaching staff, with the number of coaches that have a lot of that have the wide receiver experience of being former receivers or wide receiver coaches, you can only imagine with that kind of collaborative effort that these guys are going to show out for years to come, so long as they perform to the level that they're expected to.
Do you think he'll be successful in Indianapolis this year?
I think Well, I think the expectation is that he should be successful. At the end of
Gotta
the
be as
day,
good as Philip Rivers, right?
yeah. Well, that I think that's also the expectation. If Indianapolis was able to get what they got out of Philip Rivers last year, especially not having consistency at the quarterback spot for the last few years, whether it was Jacoby Brissett or the early retirement of Andrew Luck, and then Philip Rivers comes and has the success that he did. This is the situation that Carson wanted in the first place because he felt betrayed by the organization, and whether it's the organization's doing or his doing, it might be a little bit of both, in my opinion. And then part of it to me is that Carson didn't, I don't think Carson showed enough fight for to want to be in Philadelphia, and I think he just wanted to get away from the drama, and outside of that and a little bit of the front office, I don't think him and Howie Roseman kept a good relationship on from that point, and maybe a little bit with Doug Peterson, even though they talked down those rumors. But all of that's not the here nor there. It's an expectation at the end of the day that Carson should play better than he did last year, because this is what he wanted at the end of the day, and you can only imagine that that's going to do wonders mentally for a quarterback who's trying to put himself back on the map in the NFL.
Sounds like the current quarterback in Washington.
I mean, yeah, sure. I don't know though, because I mean Fitzpatrick's his career is a little more decorated to Carson's, even though he doesn't have a Lombardi. I mean, he's shown a little bit of success through multiple teams, but with him being a journeyman the way that he was, you can also attest to wanting to see Ryan Fitzpatrick have some stability in that manner, where a team actually keeps him, past 1 or 2 years. And maybe Washington's in prime position to do that if he shows what he's worth, and Ron Rivera likes him enough.
Oh, I would book him being the quarterback in Washington for the next 2 years. 3, because I'm sure the next contract he'll sign, he wants at least another 2 years guaranteed. So, but yeah, it would surprise me. I'd be more shocked if he had a Fitz-tragic year than a Fitz-magic year. Remember, he only got taken. They were going to the playoffs in Miami last year with a lot of less weapons. I mean, they literally yanked him because he was playing too well, not because he was playing bad. Yeah. And they yanked him in Tampa Bay. I mean, he had a bad game, but basically he was always going to get yanked in favor of Jameis for those last couple games. They had to give the number 1 overall pick a couple more games before his contract ran out. So it's been odd for Fitzpatrick. He's been a top 10 quarterback if you extrapolate it all together for the last 2 or 3 seasons now. And these are the most weapons he's had in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you go down the list, whether it's what JD McKissick wanting to improve, the rookie Diami Brown, they bring in Curtis Samuel. You guys still have
now they said briefly, not to cut you off, before we started this, I just saw that Curtis Samuel's to start the season on the PUP list, which is interesting.
That's right. I did see that because of a nagging groin injury.
That's the only thing that concerns the fan base about him, is that he just has not stayed healthy. But to your point, if he's healthy, again, weapon 4-3 guy.
Yeah, I mean, you pair him along with the expectation of how good that rookie's supposed to be in Diami Brown, and then you already have scary Terry McLaurin. Yeah, I mean, it should be guns a-blazing for a gunslinger that is Ryan.
And they just re-signed Logan Thomas to 3-year deal. He got 70+ balls last year.
So are you? So that would lead me to ask if you're expecting Logan Thomas to be the number 1 tight end, considering your current draft class, and you guys brought in John Bates in the 4th round. So it seems that Logan Thomas is going to be that future staple at the tight end spot for the Washington football team.
And I think Logan Thomas leads tight ends in the division for receptions. So yes, he's the number one tight end on the team. I think you're right about John Bates. They like him. Mel Kiper said he had the best hands of any tight end other than Pitts. So I think he will get work. They signed the Cuban Sammy Reyes that they're really excited about. I don't think he'll be so raw. I don't think he'll be ready yet. And then the last guy they signed is which he just came from. They just signed him. At any rate, the new guy I think will end up being the 3rd tight end, and Sammy will be on the practice squad. But the practice squad's interesting this year because you can stash any and everybody on there as long as they're willing to stay.
Yeah, good deal. And then the other contract extension, since we're talking extensions here, I'm sure you guys are happy about the 4-year deal that Jonathan Allen got for the defensive line. I mean, that's one of the I would have to assume that that's probably one of, if not the strongest defensive line in the division. When you talk guys like Montez Sweat and then Chase Young, and then now you extend Jonathan Allen and add him to the fold, I can only assume that you have high expectations for that defensive line going into 2021.
The defensive line is the best in the league. I mean, you don't have to be a Washington fan to say that. You can be a Philly fan and say that. It just is what it is, and it's deep. It's deep. Everybody knows of the starting 4. First of all, very excited about the Jonathan Allen extension. It was an extension, so it's actually not even. The number's actually even lower because if you take the 4-year, $72 million, you've also got to add on this year's salary, which is 1 year, like 15 or 14. So it averages. Actually, it's his 5th-year option this year, so it was like 10. So you average the whole thing together, and it's a really low number, like 16 overall. And when you realize that guys like Leonard Williams just signed $20 million contracts, then you're really excited to have Jonathan Allen at, say, $16 million, because I always thought maybe it's 18. I always thought it was going to take 18. Maybe it's closer to 18. But at any rate, anything in that ballpark is a steal. So, and then you got guys like Jonathan Smith-Williams that you should keep an eye out for. You probably have not heard him if you're not a Washington football team guy. Rookie last year is going to do big things, kind of like Tim Settle from Virginia Tech did last year for the team. He was really good. So that's the other thing. And your guy, Toehill, is that his name?
Casey Toohill.
Toohill, yes. And he's on the team, and I know they're excited about him, kind of an athletic tweener inside, D tackle, D end. Again, Ron has spent his tenure here so far talking about flex, position flex, right? That's the key to the game is position flex here in Washington, and that's what that D line does. And that's the thing, that they're not just 4 deep; they're probably 7 deep because Ioannidis comes back this year. So I mean, he was their best defensive lineman 2 years ago. So they're really strong up front. And they're really deep. I think William Jackson outside is an upgrade over what they had there last year. The guy last year was really good. They offered him a contract. He got more money from Denver, so good on him. But this is an upgrade.
Ronald Darby.
Yeah. Ronald Darby. Yeah. Yes, you're very familiar with Ronald Darby.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
And he was good for us last year. That's what I said. I mean, he played every game, and they offered him a contract. He got burned a couple of times, but that's the name of the game. Cornerbacks get burnt these days, at least once or twice a year.
Yeah.
I think we upgraded there. So I don't know. The defense got possible top 5, top 3 aspirations for sure.
Yeah, and I mean when you talk about versatility on the D line, I mean we're in a similar situation right now with the new addition as far as defensive coordinator goes, and that's part of Jonathan Gannon's philosophy. He wants this defensive line to show versatility for these guys to play multiple positions, to be able to flex like that. And speaking of D line, it seems that Washington was trying to get younger in that regard, and I'm guessing that you weren't initially surprised when you guys did not re-sign Ryan Kerrigan.
I did not think he'd get re-signed here, and in fact, it came out that Ron told him the day after the season ended that they were not going to re-sign him. They liked the young guys. They drafted the young guys. They drafted really well. Their predecessors drafted really well when it came to D-line. And there just wasn't room for Ryan. And that sucks because he may be the greatest Redskin / Washington of this generation. I mean, really, this generation hasn't had a lot of winning. I mean, my generation, I'm 40 something, so I can go back to the Super Bowls, but these guys now don't have that. And Ryan really was, and Trent Williams was kind of what we had through the 2000s and late 90s. So he's as soon as he hangs his cleats up, he goes into the Ring of Honor. He was undervalued, not here, but in the league. He was the strong man for so long. His sack count, I mean, go look at who got more sacks. It's a very, very small number for the time since he's been drafted. So you guys got a winner and the hardest working man I've ever seen. One of the best guys I've ever seen, So always great to the fans. So listen. And he's got stuff left in the tank.
Yeah.
It's not that the tank's empty. I don't believe that at all. It was a numbers game, and we just didn't have room for him. Now, I was surprised that he got offers from, I thought, the Steelers and maybe the Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
I would have thought maybe the Steelers had a better opportunity to win ball games than you guys did. But it's interesting because guys like staying in conference because they've already scouted this. Like, as fans, we don't understand the time they put into scouting these guys and knowing them. And they don't play AFC games. That's why you hardly ever see guys that hit the open market go from the NFC to the AFC, because they have to start from zero. Like, he's already scouted the NFC East every year all the time, including his own team. They still scout. So it's always interesting to see that. So that was the only thing that didn't surprise me. And quite frankly, I'm glad he went to Philly and not Dallas or New York.
Yeah, man. Just talking about Ryan Kerrigan, and it's good to hear that from a Washington football team fan, because I was thinking that in the back of my mind, and asking, like, through your eyes, what does Ryan Kerrigan bring to the Eagles? And I think it was summed up pretty well, as in, the guy's 32. He's going to be going on 33. He's close to the age of Brandon Graham. But as you said, you feel he still has a lot left in the tank, and
he's probably pissed,
Yeah, after seeing the low snap counts, in the percentage that he was given in that Washington defense, I think it was known to us, or said at some point in time, that he actually does want to contribute a little bit more than what he was given, because he
definitely can. Again, I mean, we have the two ends in Washington are destined to be all pros, and both of them are under 23.
Mm-hmm.
So there just really wasn't snaps there. And I've also been telling people this a lot too. I think you can expect to see Jonathan Allen play more snaps at DN this year. So I think that was probably another reason why they were willing to move Kerrigan. They have so many D tackles that I think you'll find Jonathan Allen slipping outside sometimes in that Buffalo nickel.
Yeah, kind of like and again, I mean, this is two different positions, but kind of like probably what Dallas is going to want to do with Micah Parsons. Like, he's a rushing, he's a rushing linebacker, not so much a pure linebacker, because he started off as an edge rusher and then converted to the position. So it seems like there's a similar philosophy there. But yeah, we bring up the fact that Kerrigan had offers from Cincinnati and then Pittsburgh, and you would imagine him in a combination with TJ Watt over in Pittsburgh, and then they got Devin Bush over there, big time players in combination to make big time plays that had to have been enticing. But at the end of the day, I think he wanted to take a little bit of an advantage in two ways. Not only, for one, staying in the division, staying close to home, which is a convenience for him. Not to say that Pittsburgh's not that much farther, but the second thing is that we just didn't have a very good depth on the defensive line at that point in time. And outside of not knowing the future of Brandon Graham and this Ryan Kerrigan signing kind of mimics to what the Eagles were doing, acquiring Chris Long back in 2017, having another savvy vet to assist some of the young guys in that locker room, and he's a great captain-like presence. So not only from a talent perspective are we getting Ryan Kerrigan, but I think a locker room presence has to be very good as well. For the amount of time that he's contributed to the Washington football team over the years.
It also shows you that he had no interest in going back to a 34.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that really, as much as it is staying division, I wonder if you could ask him that question. What was it about? Because Washington reverted back to a 43, and that really is more of his natural position. So I wonder if he was just not interested in going to particularly Pittsburgh, that runs that traditional 34, and I think the Bengals run a 34 off. But either way, I mean, Bengals were way off, and that's a farther move to your point, which probably is a good point.
Yeah, and and I have to imagine from a couple of interviews that I've seen, with Ryan Kerrigan being here talking to some local Philadelphia writers, and he did address the fact that he likes what Jonathan Gannon is doing from a defensive philosophy and the scheme that he wants to install for the Eagles based on that Mike Zimmer type style from the Minnesota Vikings. So we might see him stood up in some packages. We might see his hand in the dirt as an extra rusher or whatnot. But that's the best thing. That's the best part about him when you're adding a guy like Kerrigan to the depth chart, is that he has that versatility, and he's capable of being able to do both assignments at a very high level. So I mean, when I first seen the signing, I didn't expect that kind of signing whatsoever, but I was pretty excited at the same time. It catches you off guard a little bit. This was the signing that the Eagles were looking at, but for what we needed, it did make perfect sense.
He should be someone to be excited about, for sure.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, he definitely is, man. Well, we did mention earlier that the in terms of injury, when that was brought up a little bit ago as well, I'm assuming that, because we talked about Curtis Samuel with that groin injury, I'm assuming that you guys are a little excited with Landon Collins opening up on the active roster after just tearing his Achilles around Halloween last year. I have to imagine that that's going to be a nice boost to your defense. But that brings up the question, in my opinion, like, we've seen him over the years as one of those top guys, for those giant squads defensively, and he was at the safety spot. So now, over the years, he's getting older, and then this Achilles injury is probably going to rob him of some of his speed to be able to play the safety spot. So I have to imagine that you guys are assuming that he's probably going to convert to the linebacker position, or do you still see him as a safety?
Yeah, no, he is not. There's no converting to linebacker. I can tell you that with certainty. He hadn't put on any weight. He's too small to play linebacker. Um, listen, good on Landon. To be able to come back from the Achilles this quickly shocked me. I thought for sure he'd start on the pup. Uh, that being said, I don't know if Washington fans are exactly excited about it. He had not played well last year, up until, frankly, the game that he got injured in. And the young kid, Cameron Curl, really flashed last year. So I actually think that most Washington fans think that Cam Curl, Wally pipped him and is too good to lose his spot now, and that Landon will have to revert to some sort of Buffalo nickel or Viper role, whatever you see that in, or whatever they call it this year. So that will be an interesting camp battle to me. I don't think that job, even though he's got a big salary number, Ron has not done that so far. Like, money does not dictate who plays, and what does dictate who plays is if we give you an opportunity and you run with it, then you can have it. Look at Cam Sims, look at Jeremy Reeves from last year. So that'll be interesting to me to see what happens there. I don't think Landon is a shoe-in. I think he's a shoe-in to make the team this year. I do not think he's a shoe-in to be the starting strong safety.
And that's crazy considering that, the bag that he got for signing with Washington after leaving the New York.
Cameron Pearl was really good last year. Really good.
So I'm wondering if there's going to be, that kind of justification effect where, Eagles fans seen this in points last year where we had a guy flash that we didn't necessarily see coming, and Travis Fulgham for about 4 straight games, and then Alshon Jeffrey gets put into the mix out of nowhere just because he comes off of injury and dealing with a Liz Frank injury. They put him back. It stuns Travis Fulgham a bit, and then he wasn't necessarily the same. So I'm assuming that you guys are hoping for the best here, and that with Landon Collins being healthy again, that doesn't happen to Cameron Curl.
More good players is not a bad problem to have, I guess, is how you say it. And to your point, that's why people got fired in Philadelphia, right? I mean, because they just and again, Ron said he looked at what they did wrong last time, and they here in Washington at least they lean towards youth. And again, if you get the Cam Sims perceiving, he's going to make the roster for sure, and not just as a special teamer. He's going to get snaps, and that's because last year when they gave him snaps, he took advantage of them. Jeremy Reeves at free safety, the Shavers are ever only played special teams until last year, until they got such poor play from Apke. Then they put in DeShazer Everett, who I never thought could even come close to running fast enough to play free safety. Played really well there and got hurt. In comes Jeremy Reeves, so played well. And they told other guys, that had their eyesight's on that position, hey, the man's playing well, so don't even worry about it. We'll put you on the practice squad. And they didn't want that. So I don't know. I know that's what they're doing here in Washington. Youth rules the day. And if you get an opportunity, no matter how much we're paying you, it's yours to keep until you F it up. And I love that, because that's not how it's been here in Washington for quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one thing that the Eagles have struggled with over the years, in trying to justify the contracts that they pay out, and as soon as guys come off of injury, we automatically have to put in because of the amount of money that we invested in them, not about the sheer fact of somebody outperforming them at that moment in time to allow you to win more football games, and it just disrupts a rhythm that doesn't. That shouldn't necessarily be messed with. So
Ron was there to get you fired.
Yeah. So obviously, best wishes to Doug Peterson, but I guess it was time, and with the new quarterback, a new head coach, there's a breath of fresh air here, and we can only hope that the team does better than 4-11-1. I mean, they almost have to. So I
Well,
can't
I was
imagine
going
them
to say,
going
I
into
ask everybody on my show what they view a good season is. What do you view a good season for the Philadelphia Eagles this year?
a good season for me, if I'm being realistic. Now I've set the over under for wins for the Eagles at 8 games. So best case scenario for me is they take 10, and worst case for me would probably be 7. Now, a 7-10 record doesn't look good on the surface, obviously, but when you add context to those kinds of situations, like you can imagine that if the team ends up losing 10 games, the most important factor is, were they competitive? Like, were they close games? Were they blowouts? How sloppy did the team look as far as accumulated penalties? You know, like just the overall look of the skill positions and how they're improving. Are they making it in the NFL? Are the new guys on the coaching staff, are they making the right decisions, et cetera, et cetera? There's a lot of key factors for Eagles fans to consider, and I'm just being realistic about it. I'm not going to be the one to say that, oh, they're only going to win 5 games. No, because you always want to exceed expectations. That should be the proper attitude. And at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, at best I see 10 wins, and then at worst it's going to be 7. But I just want to see a team improve from week to week.
So, well, improving week to week, if you're rooting for a team on a rebuild and you believe that they're on a rebuild, that's exactly how you're supposed to look at it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, if we're talking records here, with that said, it looks like we hit the a little over the 45-minute mark. I know we mentioned in previous conversation that you had an allowance of 30 to 45 minutes. So I guess we can wrap it up in terms of schedule predictions, record predictions, and whatnot. I mean, it still feels a little early because we're just getting into training camp. We don't exactly know who is going to be on the 53-man roster, what the practice squads are going to consist of, how healthy these teams are going to be going into a somewhat normal training camp, because COVID's still in the background. And that's one thing that the football team's dealing with right now, that only about 60% of your players are vaccinated. And Ron Rivera is not necessarily happy about that.
No, he is not.
Being the current stipulations that the NFL has imposed in terms of vaccinated to non-vaccinated players, that there's going to be some strict penalties there. So with all things considered, with these record predictions are a rough estimate right now because they are pretty early. What are your expectations as to how well you think the Washington football team is going to perform based on their schedule?
Sure. Well, the COVID thing's interesting because Washington was the best in the league last year when it came to COVID cases.
Yeah.
So the fact that, and maybe that has led to some of this, we're not worried about his attitude, could be part of it. Listen, I think that if you did this show with every fan from every team in the division, you'd get 7 and 10. I think it's a 10-win team. I think the floor is 8, which makes it a little, not quite 7. But the team scored 40 points one time last year. They scored 30 points no times. The offense was atrocious. 2 years before that, the defense was historically atrocious. So if the offense with Ryan Fitzpatrick can be 15 in the league, and they score 40 touchdowns in 17 games, 42 touchdowns. Imagine what the offense can do if it goes out there, and the defense. Imagine what the defense can do if the offense goes out there and have given them a 10 or 14-point lead. They played with a lead 3 times last year. Last year. So I think 10 is about right. I think every team in the division has the opportunity to win right around 7, 8, 9 games. Dallas is going to be fairly good. And the Giants, I think, are better. I mean, that defense, they're better than people think. So I think that last month of the season, man, was just like, you know, a gladiator pit of interconference games is just will be crazy. So I don't know. I think 10, 8 being the floor. I think they got to win another division title, and I think they can.
Well, you bring up the New York Giants, so I have to ask from a Washington fan's perspective, do you feel Daniel Jones is the answer for them, or like it seems, it seems he's under the gun right now with the amount of weapons that they gave him on offense. Kyle Rudolph goes over there. Kenny Galladay goes over there. They still got Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton and Evan Ingram. So they loaded up on offense, and then they tried to maintain as much of their defense as possible. But the biggest question mark being Daniel Jones for most fans in the division remains. So I mean, is he? You feel that he's the quarterback for the Giants moving forward?
I know for a fact he was the pick at 15 if he fell there instead of Haskins. The
Okay.
league was really big on Daniel Jones. He is really athletic. He is super smart and coached up by Cutcliffe. So he's going to get every last opportunity there is because he's tied to Cutcliffe and the Manning family. Uh, he's not been good when pressure's on. So I don't think that I think he's the third best quarterback in the division today.
So I'm assuming that you're putting Jalen Hurts in fourth just because of a lack of
Jalen
experience.
Hurts is last for me, and Dax is first.
Okay. I as I'm not going to be biased whatsoever. I think that I think there is a fairness to it in terms of an experience perspective. But for me, when it comes to the ceiling between Daniel Jones and Jalen Hurts, I think Jalen Hurts' ceiling is a lot higher than Daniel's. He just needs, I think, Jalen being and this is the biggest thing for me.
Jalen's
Jalen
a
Hurts,
winner. I like not to cut you off. Jalen's a winner, and I like him.
yeah,
I'm not saying that. I just think when you start breaking down the intangibles, Jones's arms bigger, he's faster, he's more mobile in the pocket. So if you think that Hurts' brain is just that much bigger than Jones, then I can understand where you're going. But I gotta tell you, in every other box, it's Jones checking it off. So that's and like I said, that doesn't matter if he crumbles every time Chase Young gets in his peripheral or Fletcher Cox is kneeing him in the groin. So I get that too. I don't know. They're probably not that far off, but it's hard for me to give a guy that just hasn't had that much experience in the league over Daniel Jones, who I
yeah.
don't know should have a decent offensive line and a lot of weapons. So I don't know.
Yeah, but of course, once again, the NFC East or NFC least, as it's been called over the last few years, it looks like it's going to be a toss up again in terms of competition because, um, for the moment or in current time, I think every football team has done their due diligence in the core positions to improve as best as they can. Um, and then for us, it's just in terms of, well, we carried Jalen Hurts over from last year, um, being that none of us expected him to get picked in last year's draft class in the first place, let alone the second round. But he's here now. He wasn't a runner-up to the Heisman for no reason. I think tying with Chase Young and somebody else. He did pretty damn well at Oklahoma for that. And, for me, he gets drafted into a situation that's not ideal. They try and set him up as a Taysom Hill type of gadget quarterback, that's not what Jalen Hurts is whatsoever. So you're already setting him up for failure from the jump. But now when you go into this year and Jalen is the focal point of the Philadelphia Eagles, of him being the number one quarterback. I think that, I think that's the most important thing in allowing him to elevate his game to the next level in terms of being an NFL quarterback. So I think within due time, um, I don't know, man. Like, Jalen Hurts to me definitely has the potential to be better than Daniel Jones, and for as early as it is, and he only has 4 games under his belt. Right now you can say on experience alone, on paper, Daniel Jones is probably better, but to me, I think Jalen Hurts has the higher ceiling compared to Daniel. So, but we'll see as time goes on. You know, opinions aside, respected either way. And then, I guess we're already at damn. Time flies, man, when you're having fun at the 55-minute mark. I guess we'll work on the conclusion here. Again, shout out to everybody that came to watch the stream in the first place. It's cycled between 3 to 4 people, and obviously they're going to end up watching the rerun. Again, I was excited to finally get my Eagles schedule recon segment back up on my channel. Definitely appreciative for you volunteering to accept the invite to come on here and represent the Washington football team. I guess, unfortunately, because of how early our conversation is right now, in comparing our respected football teams that we don't play until way late in the season, week 15 and week 17, we're not going to know until then how our teams play against each other. But Washington has a decently tough schedule early. The Eagles have a decently tough schedule early. So I guess it's going to be who is the first team to crack first. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to give us an entertainment factor, especially if the division is in a battle for first place once again, because it always seems to happen. Whether we like it or not, it always seems to happen. I think we're waiting for that one team to. I guess, dominate the division, and then the other remaining teams get in that spot where we gotta take them down. But for entertainment purposes, you don't always want a division that's up for grabs, and hopefully the trend changes. But we'll see in a season that we're kind of getting back to normalcy from here on out post-pandemic. But yeah, man. Again, I appreciate it. Coming on here for those in the chat, obviously. So I can remind y'all, he does a podcast for YouTube called The Big Douglas Show, where he has a co-host representing the Washington football team. Do you cover any other Washington sports, like the Capitals, the Nationals?
We did the Wizards. But that's just the football team and the basketball team.
Okay, that's awesome. If I remember at some point, this 76ers fans have wanted Bradley Beal, but it doesn't look like that. Something like that's going to happen. But because it was rumored that Bradley might not want to come to Philly because Philly fans were rude to his wife or something. So that sucks.
They're a tight couple, so that wouldn't surprise me.
But yeah, we'll see in terms of the future of both teams. Yeah, man, I guess that'll do it. Appreciate everybody for coming out for the current installment of the Eagles schedule recon on my channel here. Big thank you once again to Big Doug here for the Big Douglas Show for representing the Washington football team. That's going to do it for the two of us here. This has been Lindy End Zone. Fly Eagles, fly bleed green. MFFLs, go Mavericks. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you soon.
Thanks for having me.